through the interwebs. So, hi Steve. Yeah, I'll just kind of try and vamp for a little while, for a few more seconds. And then, yeah, we can just jump right into it. Boom. Okay, right. So, hello and welcome. Let us maximize this one particularly for now. Right, so I'll move it over to here for the moment. Right, so hello and welcome to Proto. Right, Proto is a program on cast.live. Here we basically sort of, look into the nature of sort of crypto-centric first principles design, right? So what crypto is really good at is that, it enables us to sort of think of communication, collaboration, and compensation in really sort of rich and novel ways. And in so doing, the idea that we've, sort of arrived at here is to create an environment where, the ideal audience here are not particularly people who, sort of either design oriented or tech or sort of programming oriented who already sort of self-starters, right? The idea is, yeah, to sort of engage with some of those folks, but primarily to actually kind of go after folks who, who are problem solvers, but, things like code, for example, kind of scares them. So, we're sort of, creating an environment where we look at both the front end and the back end as well, of different ideas, right? So ideas which span, from things like decentralized identity, so DIDs, all the way to, dapps, right? So decentralized applications, wallets, different kinds of decentralized applications as well, right? So yeah, so let's just bring up a few of the folks who are actually joining us today. Just turn this off for the moment. Do this, do that. There we go. Okay, cool. So today we're joined by, or is it? I can never figure that out. Is it joined by or joined with? Anyway, today joining us is Tevo, and Roberto and James. Right, so do you guys want to sort of like give like a 1 to 3 sentence self-introduction?
To what? No, I'm Teva, and I'm from ProjectCatalyst.
Cool. James?
My name is James from Catalyst and Gimbal Labs. Yeah, live on the East Coast of the United States.
Awesome. And last but not least, we can't hear you. Wait, I've not muted you, have I? Okay, yeah. Okay, there we go. That's all right.
I'm Roberto Carlos from Spain. I'm one of the Gimbal Labs founders, along with James. I'm a system administrator that is trying to understand blockchain.
Awesome. Quite holistic and quite succinct. Okay, awesome, cool. So yeah, as the title showed earlier, the idea here today is to look into design decentralized identity, right? So we're still pretty early on, especially because we're going to be looking at it in the context of Cardano specifically here. The current implementation of decentralized identity is called Prism, right? It's been developed by a company, IOHK, and it's yet to be released. But a few of us kind of got together and had conversations about with the release of metadata, right? We got to sort of talking about how we can actually sort of do like an MVP, like a minimum viable product, sort of like a DIY version of a DID, and yeah, we thought actually it would be nice to sort of just start conversations about that, and then gradually sort of in future sessions actually sort of break down what it would actually require in terms of sort of having a sense of what the base minimum is, and then sort of layering on more security in terms of having the DID itself have more weight in terms of being trusted, right? So I'll just move over to here and bring this up. Right, so this is a Figma file which we've all sort of got access to. Some have read-write access to, some just have read access to. But yeah, so the idea is I'll just jump into it over here and zoom in a little bit more so that you can be able to see. These are the three things that we're going to be talking about today. I've got way too many windows open. There we go. Maybe I need more monitors. Okay, yeah, so the first one is defining identity, right? So we'll be looking at sort of legacy solutions of identity and then comparing them to digital ones, not specifically crypto ones, but also, you know, adding in what the difference, you know, between existing digital ones are and what crypto kind of, you know, what edge crypto sort of adds to that. And then, you know, looking at the nature of a did, specifically not just identity, looking at the nature of a did as it pertains to like different entities, right? So you've got human and then you've got an institute. And then after that, we'll, you know, spend, so the first one will be give or take 20 minutes spent on that, or 15 minutes at this point. And then move on to the second point, which is levels of trust, right? Which point we'll sort of look into you know, what is at stake, right? Because in a way, levels of trust depend on what is at stake. You know, if you've got a lot of monetary value compared to a little, you know, the appetite or the requirement for trust varies. So, you know, we'll sort of, you know, speak a little bit about that, and then, you know, sort of different implementations of things which can possibly add on to layering, you know, the different levels or layers of trust, right? So PGP, multisig, net, sort of, and the wider, broader, different like circles of networks, like, you know, like multisig and institutes and people and that kind of thing. And then lastly, sort of concluding with looking at contextual use cases, right? Because obviously, to be able to have things like a decentralized autonomous organization, DAOs, you need an identity, right? Because you need to be able to actually, you know what, you know, who you're talking to, know who has, you know, a particular set of value, you know, in a particular context, right? Because all of that sort of sets the table or sets the scene, so to speak, for people's interactions within said autonomous organization. And then, yeah, and then moving on to other sort of examples like a point of sale, which can then be enabled, things like NFTs, things like oracles, etc. So yeah, just a whole bunch of richer experiences, which then sort of become unlocked, so to speak, once we figure out identity, right? Which is one of the reasons why I think it's really interesting to actually just kind of, you know, leverage, you know, the kind of DIY approach to implementing something before kind of, you know, waiting for the powers that be to sort of release, you know, release something, so to speak. Okay, so that's that. Before kind of moving into that, I'll just quickly want to give a sort of a higher level understanding of kind of the environment that we'll be talking about, right? So, and actually, after I kind of go through this, I'll just sort of invite other folks to just kind of feed back into this and their sort of understanding of the layer, you know, the lay of the land, so to speak, right? So this is, yeah, sort of the data hierarchy, or sort of the taxonomy of the blockchain environment, where at the core you have the database, right, and the computer and the currency. Here, sort of illustrated by, you know, the ADA sign, the currency, and the cog representing the computer. So the wider network that is, you know, the Cardano stake pools, who are basically in a way sort of like the hive mind kind of computer there. And then underneath that you've got a layer which is sort of the explorer layer, where things like, you know, APIs sort of exist, where you have information being queried from the bigger database, and that then feeding into other sort of layers like wallets and decentralized applications, and sort of experiences which are built, I suppose, on the web through decentralized applications. So, with that kind of high level description of the environment that we're dealing with, does anyone have some sort of input that they want to provide regarding?
I would maybe add that wallets and dapps could kind of same on the same wave, because you can skip dapps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also the web in a way. So like in previous conversations, what came to mind was the fact that it's really quite blurry. Like dApps and wallets, even the web itself, right? Like they all kind of blur into each other. Yeah. So yeah,
Like,
I wonder if there's a parallel between the way we talk about layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains, right? So for example, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Cardano serving as a layer 1 infrastructure on top of which certain things can be built, right? Like a wallet is a layer 1 dApp, and then layer 2 dApps can go on top of this. The best apps need wallets, right? The ones where we're really able to do innovative and new things. You have to have the wallet as an access point to do all that. And then web, you could argue that web is even layered on top of that, right? Or maybe web is an element of the dApp layer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what are you gonna say, Roberto?
there was to say something similar, like wallets are like explorers somehow, because, for example, you have a feature that it's to explore stake pools on wallets. So I would put explorers like a low level. I will put wallets also as a low level dApp, because it's already a decentralized application that just transacts, do a little bit of exploring, and then dApps will be more like a layer on top of that do whatever stuff, like I don't know, post tweets or provide identity or interact with that identity or wherever.
Yeah, no, yeah, that is a really good point. Yeah. So in a way, like if it was to be represented somehow, like the dApp layer would kind of seep a little bit into wallets, but then it would be a lot fatter outside of wallets, and then maybe even a lot fatter on the web layer kind of thing. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. So okay, cool. Let's now scroll back up to this bit here, and then yeah, let's actually get into. Let's actually just move this a little bit higher. Ooh, too high. Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. So this whole time I did not realize that I had music playing in the background. Hopefully that has not triggered the algorithms and oh god, you live and you learn. Okay, yeah, so yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about defining identity. Yeah, so legacy versus digital, right? Anyone have thoughts? James, I feel like you'll probably be a good person to sort of point to at this point. Yeah, like share some thoughts about the distinction between these two.
Oh man. Okay. So legacy versus digital identities. So first of all, I mean, it's a matter of what a digital identity allows us to do, right? Just digitizing a driver's license is one thing, or a passport, for example. And in effect, those already are, right? We all have like barcodes on our driver's license, on our passports that are hooked up to databases, right? So I guess maybe the first point is to say that, like, look, like a digital identity doesn't change much, does it? Right? It just it can do all the same things as legacy identities. It doesn't change our relationship to institutions just by being digitized, right? So I guess really the only thing I have to say about this is what's the decentralization piece, right? And so digitizing is just the first step towards that. And what does it allow us to do once those institutions and systems to which those identities are connected have some element of decentralization?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But I think at this point it will be helpful to, I suppose, go even one lower, right, and just maybe perhaps talk about the nature or importance of identity and medium,
Nice.
right? The nature of or the necessity of identity, the mediums, right, and the importance of um, the the importance of what's the word I'm trying to find, like how unkillable it is, right?
There's
Right. So okay, so if you look at legacy stuff, right? So we've got um paper, right? Majority of them, if you think of, back in the day, show me your papers, right? Like that's, an actual turn of phrase. Show me your papers, and a piece of paper is really perishable, right? For lack of a better word. But then if you look at the nature of what identity is, it's basically in a way like how other people, how the world, banks, and institutions, whatever, government, shops, historically have identified using the word to define the word here, have isolated you and sort of established that you are who you say you are, and you are the person who have had continued interactions with, and so I have built trust with you over time. But if the representation of you, right, or things that you own, like say for example a land deed or your birth certificate or something, are in in a sort of in a format which is basically destructible, um it really sort of undermines the thing being identified in the first place, right? So I feel like yeah, that's quite important to understand. And so that's in a way the distinction between the legacy, I would say legacy kind of medium, and then the digital environment, right? So yeah, that's what I meant by sort of going like a little bit backward. And then now coming into what the point which you just made, right, which is decentralization, right? What role does that play in the context um, of making the distinction between just having something digitized, but then like shifting it into the crypto sort of sphere, and what value that adds, as well as I suppose when we shift into the crypto sphere, we've got in a way like the underlining of decentralization, so to speak. So yeah, thoughts?
I would add that you really get with digitization, you get with really effective like efficiency, like efficiency to like check something, because if you, let's say you used to have to give paper to and to prove that the paper is real is way like almost impossible. But with digitizing, you just have so many more weights. You can go all around the world and like touch like different people with a chip or whatever. Yeah, you literally just have broader connection with everybody on the spot when you need to like make a proof.
Yeah, so in a way the transmissibility of it is actually a point of value there. I feel like you're going to add something there, James.
Well, you got me thinking about, I guess when I first answered your question, I was thinking about the representation of the ID itself, more than the system upon which it's built. And so, right, like, and I named driver's licenses and passports because those are the first things that come to mind. But like the more interesting contexts are like you said, land deeds, college transcripts, right, and other professional certifications, and then credit scores, right, and around the world, just taking transcripts and credit scores, the infrastructure for each of those is different depending on where you go, right? And there's countries on the planet where you might not have access to either of those, whether it's credentials or credit scores. And those, the nature of those things and how they're used is controlled, right? It's by institutions, and sometimes it, you know, so this has really serious consequences for people who don't even have access to these things. And for people like me, who, you know, I live in a country that does have systems for these, but it can still be a really bad user experience. For example, you know, there's no reason technically why transcripts are not fully digitized, right? It's just, it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, and when you think about here in the States, what we pay for higher education, for example, the fact that years later, we still have to jump through hoops to get this embossed paper transcript when we need to prove that we were educated at some point in our lives. It's really a crazy thing if you stop to think about it, right? That you have to like go through this process to get this piece of paper that's been stamped and that you paid for and you waited for so you can hand it off to another person, when really, how hard is it to say, look, I did this work at this time in my life? So, and all that same logic relates to credit scores too, right? There's so many. You are so far from kind of having agency over that number that it can be really disorienting, I guess.
Yeah.
I would like to add something. That we are speaking of legacy identity, we are taking it for granted, but you cannot. You can even be in a position that you just are stateless. There are countries that you won't provide you with an ID, so you are like in this movie, The Terminal.
The Terminal, yeah.
You belong nowhere. That's a tough stuff. You can be doomed just because your father is marked of being from a adept of a religion, and your mother from a different one, and then you burn and you are left out just because you burn. And that's crazy, and that's a very basic problem, that having digital identity, not just economic identity, which is definitely a type of identity that will be a good start to have, but just having an identity with these decentralized technologies, we can provide that to people that it's left out by traditional institutions or countries.
Yeah, and actually, to add on to that point, I feel like a really valuable point here that has been made actually in the private chat here by Steve is revocability, right? So with centralization, you know, you have this it basically enables and fosters an environment where, you know, abuse of power can basically just really be really prevalent, right? So such things happen within centralized environments, right? So, you know, compared to the nature of decentralized identity, because there are all these different elements that sort of, you know, that compose it, it's that much more difficult to actually, you know, just simply, you know, basically cancel someone or, in a way, deplatform someone, right? And yeah, so if you think of the nature of life itself, right? To deprive someone of identity, in it fundamentally deprives them of what they need, the provisions that they need in life, basically, right? Because identity is connected to money, money is connected to things like food, boarding, safety, etc., right? So yeah, I feel like there's like an underlying sort of like fundamentalness to identity there, where you have decentralization versus decentralized environment, and how vital that is to it as well. Okay, right. So let's have a look. Shall we move on? Let's see if this will
Maybe
actually work. Yeah, go on. Go
to
on, Tifa.
pick brains, would anyone able to say something where the institutions or our centralized system would be better than the decentralized?
Good point. Good point. Good. Yeah, devil's advocate. Okay. I've got kind of like a quick one here. To buy others time to try and maybe think of something. One thing that I always kind of bring up in terms of design systems is I like comparing it to like old stuff, right? So I think if you look at the brain, right? So something like the brain, you have the brain or even the heart, right? The relationship within the brain or of the heart to the body. So the heart, for instance, never like there's a reason why you don't hear of heart cancer, right? That's because the heart never like the cellular nature of the heart doesn't actually change, right? From when you're born, I believe, to like when you die. So that's quite a sort of important distinction between it and the rest of the body, right? Because with the nature of ever-changing cells, there's a potential for something to then be compromised. So there's that relationship, and I feel like the slowness of the disadvantages that the heart has in this case are maybe could be paralleled to the slowness or inefficiencies of the centralized environment, where the slowness perhaps, or even the bureaucracy and the red tape, does have some advantage in that it's not as fast moving. So I would say maybe that is an advantage. And yeah, similar thing goes for the brain, where you have the limbic brain, which is quite basic, and then you have the cortex, which is a lot more higher order thinking kind of thing. So yeah, I think that I'd answer that in that way. Does anyone else have some sort of an idea of where centralization comes in?
Same way. Oh, sorry. In the same way that custody. I mean, what if you lose the keys to your identity? We really need to think about educating people while we build the tools to provide the people to recover somehow their identity, and that's I think a good challenge to tackle.
Yeah. Although, like, you bring up that is a really good point. However, like, to this point, I feel like in terms of custody, I feel like, and I think the future is going to be multi authentication, right? Where you have, in the same way a DID is rich from all these different components that basically define it and give it weight. I feel like custody in sort of recovery will be the same way, where you have multi authentication, from whether it's from your gate to as we have with biometrics these days, to your voice, like all these different things, right? Who you are, so to speak. If you look at the triad of what is it, who you are, what you know, and what you have, kind of thing. I might have got that mixed up, but I feel like personally, I think, but also I hope that is going to be the future, right? Writing 12 or 24 letters, in a sort of onto a piece of paper and so on, like that's not that. Yeah, No, just no. That's not the future, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Can we go to Steve's question in the chat here? He asked, "Is a did an NFT? Is a did the ultimate NFT?"
That is a good. I never even thought of it. Yeah. So NFT is a non-fungible token, which, yeah, just for context here, for those who I suppose are not familiar with the term or the concept, it's the difference between, I suppose, fiat or cash and like the Mona Lisa, right? The Mona Lisa is only one and it's, super unique. But $1 or £1, etc., like, you can be able to, they're fungible, right? So you can be able to swap them. They're basically the same. So now is identity, I suppose if a did represents the uniqueness of a person or an institution, then fundamentally it is unique and is not fungible.
Yeah, it's definitely non-fungible token, but is it ultimate? Perhaps, but when you create a deed or your identity then you don't want just one state give you the identity. Maybe you want the car licenses give you identity. Maybe you want the healthcare to give you identity, and then you have like a collection of these identities, which of course you can also bundle up and create another non-fungible token with all of these signatures.
Yeah, and I feel like actually perhaps a difference here is you have NFTs as we have come to think of them. Like, for example, let's use CryptoKitty, right? Every kitty is unique, but the only thing that changes is the value of the kitty, not the kitty itself. But when it comes to a did, the did itself mutates, right? So that's, I feel like, quite an important distinction, right? It's not fungible in that the parameters, the sort of the bubble around it is not fungible, but the inside of it is malleable, right? It evolves.
It's alive.
Exactly, it's alive.
But is it, if you mutate the non-fungible token, then you actually just move to another block and say this NFT is old one, this is new one, but it represents the same thing. So you don't change the values or parameters in that token, but you just make the exit plan. If update happens, then I go to next chain. No, isn't that?
I don't know. I feel like the nature, from my understanding, I could be wrong, right? Again, like that. That's what's great about all this, right? We're sort of like all kind of feeling our way through the darkness. From my understanding,
Steve.
right? From my understanding, non-fungible tokens are exactly that. Like any mutation is would exist as a new thing, right? Like the token itself would be forever frozen in time and never be mutated. Like any new instance of it, like a kitty, if two kitties mate and create a new one, the new one is not a new version of one of the two old ones, so to speak. Like the two old ones it's like your parents, right? Once they have a child, they don't cease to exist because, in a way, the child now exists, right? The parent is still alive.
This example of people is so interesting, though.
I know,
right? Because when Tavo first said it, it was so obvious. Steve, great question. So okay, right? So a human being is ultimately the most non-fungible thing, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully. And we live in a world where sometimes people are not treated that way, right? Especially when we talk about institutions, there are plenty of institutions that treat humans as fungible. And this is where kind of the fluidity of what your identity is might come into play, right? So for example, there's no one else like each of us. However, if I represent my identity in some way to receive banking services or insurance services or whatever, that identity point can be put into a basket that's sold to another insurer as if there were fungibility there, right? And tradability. So yeah, that's just a philosophical point more that you guys got me thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, during the week, Quasar actually, I believe, like brought to our attention the notion of, was it social inflation, which apparently within the insurance sector, is a whole thing, which in a way, comes back to what you just said, right? This idea of people kind of, being traded or sort of being seen as commodities and sort of fungible in some way, whether it's as insurance products or employees even, right, who are sort of expendable, so to speak.
Political actors.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this conversation has been really awesome so far, but I feel like we're still sort of languishing on the very first point. It's been really awesome.
I think we should push it, because we cannot squish everything else into like last 10 minutes.
No. Well, okay, okay. Tell you what, yeah. Let's just try and get as far as we possibly can. Yeah. Again, the nature of this thing is to sort of be have layers and to evolve, right? So yeah, let's have a look at levels of trust. So yeah, let's have a discussion about this. Actually, to kick us off, Roberto, if you don't mind. So to give a bit of context here, Roberto has actually, been looking into this particular idea of a DIY, basically like did sort of MVP, or minimum viable product. And in so doing, he's kind of approaching it with, having the idea of, adding existing sort of blocks, sort of like a Lego, to be associated with one particular sort of ID, so to speak. But anyway, he's going to put in, much better words than I just did. But yeah, go ahead and sort of give us your insights in terms of your explorations, and how that relates to how you've thought of levels of trust.
So we start thinking about building a very basic identity on Cardano blockchain, and the very first thing that came to our mind is a stake address, which you actually register on the blockchain. That would be the first identity we could have, but it's ultimately a very non-meaningful identity, right? So as you said, we were thinking how to aggregate some other identities we have so far out there in our life, in digital lives, like I don't know, PGP, key pairs would be a good starting point. There is a good legacy of use of GPG and PGP on the open source communities. We have Keybase, which is basically already an aggregator of identities where you can prove that you own a certain domain, or that you own a certain Twitter account, that you own. That could be cryptographically bound to your wallet address, let's say. Yeah, we are already using digital identity with single sign-on all the day. We are using Facebook and Google We don't really own that identity because they can just shut down the platform tomorrow, and we are the platform from our accounts on many different services. Like I don't know, Dropbox comes to my mind. You can, well, we could have some recovery process in place, I guess, but we could wake up one day and the platform is shut down and it's over. So how can we replace that with blockchain identities is a very holistic way of doing it. It's what we are really thinking. We have no idea, but we are just brainstorming and trying to figure out.
Okay, so okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here if you don't mind. So you mentioned PGP and Keybase, like, okay, so in terms of basically having a wallet, and basically the wallet being in this case acting as the did, right, and then sort of associating these other elements to this particular wallet, is that sort of, yeah. So PGP, I've got a really like not so good understanding. It's is it pretty good privacy? Like, could you just give us sort of like an explanation of what it is and why, you know, why it would actually make for a good point of reference to link that, you know, actually creates trust.
So I won't use PGP specifically. I will just use private and public keys. So you can have a key pair that it's you basically keep your private key very well because it's your identity in this case. You give anyone your public key, so you can sign with your private key pieces of text or whatever, and anyone having the public key can check if those things you sign are legit. So that's the building blocks of the cryptographic building blocks of PGP. So we have these services like Keybase where you basically sign a message, tweet it, write a tweet on Twitter, and then anyone can check that you really did it. So I don't know if I made a good explanation of that. But
wait a second. I will ask the other way around. So I received the Twitter and I have his person public key. So I use his public key on the Twitter message to see what, or how do I like read, or what, or I have his private key, or when I use my own private key on the Twitter, I get his public key. Or how do I like know? Who is the Twitter owner?
I think I can be able to actually answer this. So I think simply, so once you create a Keybase account, it basically asks you, hey, do you want to link other accounts, for example, Twitter? And then, you know, you enter your handle, you know, you say @Tevo, and then, you know, it tells you basically go over to Twitter and tweet out this specific thing, right? So this is in a way to simply prove that you have access to that account and you are who you say you are, right? And then Keybase is able to basically have a look at, you know, this public tweet. Yeah, I think if your Twitter account is private, then, you know, I don't know how that would work. But yeah, you know, tweets are mostly public, so you'll be able to see, oh, okay, this person actually tweeted this out. You know, that's basically verification. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I will take it a little easier then. So I create the message, I sign it, and when I send it out, automatically my public key is also represented that I sent that message out on somewhere else. And when somebody looks at the message, he knows, okay, this message was sent out, and in the like public blockchain, I see my public key saying that I sent out this message, like a double proof. Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we can put another example like this. Okay, I give you my public key. So whenever you want to check if a content came from me, you just perform cryptographic proof. With that key, I gave you in person, so you know it's authentic. You could prove basically anything that came from me because I sign all my messages, all my emails, all my actions are stamped with my signature.
I understand. But what does the proof look like? So you give me something, I take your public key, I hash it, now I get another hash.
You just check if it matched, like
I need to compare with something, because if I get the code, then it could be someone else's code.
One of the other things that helped me understand this is just recognizing that nothing replaces the fact that your physical hardware has to be secure, right? And your private key is going to be on some hardware, and if somebody gets access to that hardware, then it's game over for you, right? So you still, and when we talk about a Cardano wallet, there's a lot of different ways to handle that, whether you keep anything on your hot device in the first place, whether you're using a hardware wallet, right? But at the end of the day, there's still going to be these points where you can fail. It's just about recognizing the likelihood, right? So for example, this idea of private and public keys is kind of like literally as good as gold, right? As long as my computer is secure and other people can't access it to use my private keys and impersonate me, I'm good. Just like if I'm choosing to hold precious metals over crypto because I think for some reason they're more secure, somebody can come take them, right? so there's this, the physical endpoint doesn't disappear here. And to me, the combination of private and public keys gets us that far without doing much better than it in terms of security. I don't know if that's too much of a backdoor to understanding of it, but that it helped me to kind of think about what it isn't, right?
Yeah, and in a way, I feel like perhaps, it's 55. We've got 5 minutes. Yeah, go ahead, Teva.
Okay, so you got the message. You gonna sign it with your private key. You send it out. Now I have a public key, and I check with your public key that this is as the proof. Do I see that your name or some kind of something I know about you, or the proof is my public key or something what says that it was sent to me? Or does it mean I use my private key to unlock your public key?
No, just think about the public key as a key that fits or not fit in my message.
So if I
matches with the message, then it was me, and that's done by mathematical cryptographic algorithms that are open source, so anyone could implement it in a piece of software and do the mathematical equation to prove that it's
So
the key.
so the answer is not like a name or something. It's just yes or no, match or not.
Yeah, well, I suppose we can have. I don't know if we have more complex algorithm that could extract. Well, we do, but yeah, the key point is that you can prove things like the way we prove that we have coins or.
Yeah. Yeah, so wow, it's been a really good conversation. Now, I think it makes sense to kind of like wrap it up in the 3 odd minutes that we have remaining. I think a key point, the key point should be the name of this CSK. Yeah, so yeah, I think it would be nice to kind of go around and just kind of get a sense of what the hell you got from this conversation, if anything. Yeah, and then yeah, because again, I feel like, you know, as Steve said in the chat, like this needs to be a conversation which continues, and I feel like an important thing that I want to do, you know, if I could start, is actually create like a mind map, or sort of like a flow chart, which actually simply illustrates the nature of all of this, right? Even down to like, what exactly do you mean by signing a message, right? And then even maybe, you know, how that relates to metadata, right? Over the last week, we, you know, have been having a lot of conversations about metadata, right? And we you know, yet to know some things like, you know, kind of smart contract directly speak to you know, without using the oracle, kind of smart contract actually directly sort of read metadata and you know, stuff like that. So I feel like just creating a simple illustration of all these things can then actually put us in a much better position, because right now, you know, we're kind of, you know, in the middle of nowhere ish, you know, kind of giving these analogies kind of thing. So I feel like having that would, you know, basically sort of clarify it, and that's what I'm going to do basically between now and the next one that we have. Tevo, do you want to give us your takeaway?
I'm finishing up the mind map of what is private key and what we explained. But I had one question: who am I? What I have?
What I know.
What I know. This is identity.
Exactly. So James?
I agree with your main takeaways, and I think Tevo has hit it on the head about what the general public's question is going to be about this, right? It's and at the root of his question is, so what? How is this different from what I've already got? It feels like it's a lot of difficulty to get something that's really not that much better. So I'm really excited to find those use cases that just unlock for people a satisfying answer to the question that Tevo was asking that feels essential.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. Roberto?
Yeah, I do agree that we need to put this on simple words because it's essentially very basic and easy. And whenever we get people to understand this and start building like we are doing, it will be unstoppable.
Exactly. Yeah. is the right expression. Cool. Thank you very much, everyone. So if you've watched this to this point, clearly you think what we're doing here is interesting, at the least, or sort of, you know, integral, at the best. So, you know, why not join us? Go to cast.live, give us your feedback. You know, part of molding these foundational ideas is our continued sort of interaction with the audience, you know, as we gradually grow out. So, you know, this is sort of super important. So now we are going to be going off to the town hall, and yeah, I'll see you guys over there. Thank you very much, everyone who's turned up here, everyone who's watched, you know, Steve Lockhart, Steve Aldrich, Niels, and everyone who's on screen. Hope I've not left anyone else out. Yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I really look forward to, having these continued conversations. Cool. Thank you. Do, 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 do.